All right, today we're going to tackle a question so big, so ambitious, it's almost geopolitical science fiction. We're running a massive thought experiment that would literally reshape the entire planet.
I know, it sounds pretty out there, right? But stick with me. By asking this question, we can uncover some incredible truths about the power, the hidden connections, and, yeah, the deep, deep challenges that define the Western world today.
So, the very first thing you need to wrap your head around is just the sheer economic gravity of this thing. We're talking a combined nominal GDP based on projections for 2026 of a staggering $53 trillion.
And look, we're not just talking about another powerful country here. This would be a true hyperpower, a single political entity on a scale that has absolutely no precedent in the whole of human history.
Okay, so what does this $53 trillion engine actually look like from the inside? Let's crack this thing open and see.
And you can see the scale is it's across the board. It's not just that $53 trillion GDP. You're looking at a population of almost 800 million people, a combined active military of 2.7 million. This is total dominance across every single key metric you can think of.
And just to put that economic power into perspective for you, this one single country would command about 45% of the entire planet's economic output. It would basically get to write the rules for the global economy.
But it's not all just about raw power. What's really interesting is the internal synergy you'd get. Europe is staring down the barrel of a demographic winner, while the US has this younger, growing population. The thinking goes that American youth could help stabilize Europe's welfare systems, while European know-how and things like healthcare could really benefit the US.
And this is where it gets really human, beyond just the spreadsheets. The source material asks a really profound question. In both the US and the EU, we're seeing this rise in what sociologists call anomie, this feeling of rootlessness, of despair, especially among young people who just feel stuck. Could a huge, grand project like this actually change that?
So the thinking here is that total freedom of movement could completely transform a generation's entire outlook. That feeling of being trapped gets replaced by a genuine horizon of possibility. An engineer from Ohio could pack up and move to Berlin. An artist from Spain could try their luck in Texas. This creates agency. It creates this amazing cultural fusion and maybe, just maybe, a new sense of purpose.
Okay, so if that's what's happening on the inside, what about the outside? How would this new hyperpower just completely upend the global order? Let's look at the shockwave it would send, starting with its main rival.
Okay, so let's run a simulation. An all-out trade war. The escalation is brutal and it's fast. China makes the first move, a surgical strike at the West's weak points, rare earth minerals and pharmaceuticals. The United West hits back with its ultimate weapon, the financial guillotine. It cuts China out of the SWIFT banking system and freezes its assets. The result, a massive, painful inflationary shock for everybody.
And the fallout? Well, it would be brutal for everyone. The United West gets thrown into a nasty recession with huge price spikes. But China? It faces something even worse, a deflationary collapse, as its factories suddenly lose their biggest customer and are just buried under mountains of goods they can't sell.
But here's the kicker: nobody really wins. The whole thing ends in this incredibly costly, destructive stalemate. In game theory, they call it a Nash equilibrium. It's the point where both sides are losing so badly that neither one can risk making another move. The damage is already done.
So, okay, that short-term shock is painful, but the model shows the United West actually wins in the long run. So why is that? Well, because it holds 4 unbeatable trump cards. It's got total energy independence. It becomes an unstoppable magnet for the world's best talent. It has an innovation engine that can produce breakthroughs China can't match. And it has absolute, total dominance of the global financial system.
All right, let's zoom out even more. What would this mean for the planet as a whole, especially when it comes to the single biggest issue of our time, climate change?
What's fascinating is that a united West would get to merge two totally different, but, really complementary climate strategies. It would combine America's carrot approach, throwing massive subsidies at green tech, with the EU's stick approach of carbon pricing and border tariffs. The result? You'd create the world's first ever green hegemon.
But here's the thing, right? Absolute power, even when it's for a good cause, it's never going to be popular. For the developing world, all these new green standards could start to look a whole lot like old-school Western protectionism, just designed to lock them out of the game.
And you've got to believe the Global South wouldn't just take this lying down. The simulation shows they'd counterstrike. They'd form their own resource cartels for critical green minerals, they'd build their own financial systems outside of Western control, and they'd use their power at the UN to block everything until their demands are met.
So to stop the world from basically splitting in two, the United West would have to make a huge pivot. Instead of acting like a ruler, it would need to become a partner. That means launching a green Marshall Plan for the Global South, treating its green tech not as a secret weapon, but as a public good, and sharing the industrial wealth.
In this, all of this, the economy, the geopolitics, it all boils down to the final and maybe the biggest challenge of all.
You know, when you strip it all away, the biggest roadblock isn't the math. It's not the military charts. It's sovereignty. It's that deeply personal, deeply political willingness to merge who you are into something bigger and something new.
I mean, just try to imagine the very first election in this new supercountry. Your old parties, they'd probably just melt away. Instead, you'd get these new transatlantic groups. You'd have federalists in the big cities pushing for more integration, sovereigntists in the rural areas fighting for local control, and humanists among the young demanding climate action and healthcare for all.
And that right there, that's the billion-dollar question, isn't it? Can people from places as different as Ohio and Bavaria, with such different histories and cultures, can they really find enough common ground to pick one leader and build one shared future together?
So in the end, that's what this whole thought experiment leaves us with. It's a choice. Is a future of unbelievable scale, stability, and maybe even purpose worth giving up the comfort and familiarity of the nations we know today? That's the question at the very heart of this idea.